Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. And yes, this is Take 5 with Steven Travers. And Steven, today, we're produced by Logan Landers, our producer and engineer. Some of the shots that you'll see that Logan's going to put up today are going to be kind of special. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, just about 4 weeks ago and got a great pleasure in seeing my son get to play in the oldest ballpark in America. He didn't understand it. I kind of did. We got different generations. Some of my kids, they don't know who Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny are, but we'll work on that, folks. We're going to try to get better and bridge together the generational gap. But Steven, today we got a special guest. I think we're going to go down memory lane in many respects. We're going to learn a few things. We're going to reflect on a few things, and I think we'll all be the better for it.
Well, this is fantastic. I want to welcome Gerald Watkins, who's representing Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama. And even though I am a Californian, I have some connection to the state of Alabama. And I have been to Birmingham and I've been to Tuscaloosa because in 2005, I was there researching a book. If you look just to my right in the background, you'll see a book called One Night, Two Teams, Alabama versus USC and the Game That Changed a Nation. That is a book that I wrote. It was published in 2007. It's about the 1970 USC Alabama football game, which played an enormous role in integrating football in the Southeastern Conference and throughout all of college football. And last week we had Kerry McCluggage on, who is the producer of the movie that hopefully this book will be depicted on screen for. And so I was back there at Legion Field, at the Bear Bryant Museum, at Rickwood Field back in 2005. And I even was put on a PhD track by the University of Alabama to help research and write this book. So as I say, I've got some Alabama roots. I don't have much of an accent, but roll Tide.
Well, it's interesting that Legion Field is just a hop, skip, and a throw, or maybe if Dave Parker were making the throw, it would be one, wouldn't it, Gerald? It's not that far, just a couple blocks away is Legion Field from where Rickwood Field is. And let's introduce you properly. Gerald Watkins Jr. is the president of Rickwood Fields, and we're going to talk to him today about all the goings-on with Rickwood, the museum that's there, all of the great activities that are a part of Rickwood. Gerald, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And I have to tell you, Stephen, I'm an Alabama fan, and I was not at that game, but I listened to it on the radio, and I know everything about it. And it was a tough pill to swallow to see our Crimson Tide get just demolished by Sam Cunningham. But at the same time, the result made all the difference in the world to our program because Coach Bryant was able to change and go with the times and do the right thing and bring in African-American players, and the rest is history.
Well, hopefully I captured that history in my book, and maybe it'll be captured. Interestingly enough, and we're going to be talking about the movie 42, which I believe was filmed partly at Rickwood Field. That movie was produced by a company called Legendary Pictures, and at one time they basically owned the rights to the movie version of my book, and this was like 2013, right on the heels of that 42 movie. And the timing was great, but for some reason it didn't quite happen. But we're gonna make it happen. And Kerry McCluggage was on last week, and he promised that it's going to. So hopefully, I will send you a copy of my book after the show, and hopefully someday I'll meet you at the movie premiere on the Bama campus.
Well, I would love to go, but let me mention this to you again. Deviate a little bit. Another movie was produced and had I guess you'd say the world premiere last week, called Nothing But a Winner.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about the Alabama football program and produced by, let's see, Jeremiah Castile, who played at Alabama.
Yeah. Yes.
Son.
All-American.
Yes. And Marlon Humphrey, who's a current player, played for Coach Saban, I believe, financed it. So check out Nothing But a Winner. And they spent a lot of time talking about the things that you covered in your book. And for people that are listening that don't know, and I won't take up much of Steven's time, but Alabama football had it was a shock to the system when Sam Cunningham ran through the Crimson Tide like they were high school kids. And because of that, it changed the trajectory of Alabama football. And I think Coach Bryant won 3 national championships after he
did
integrated the team.
3 or 4. Well, interestingly enough, you mentioned people producing movies. Peyton Manning has a company called Omaha Productions, and they are involved in the production of our film, which I don't know if we're going to call it One Night, Two Teams, or I think we're going to call it either The Game That Changed a Nation or The Turning of the Tide. Those are working titles, but
well, I wish you the best, and I can't wait to see that develop, even though, again, that was a bitter pill to swallow for me as an Alabama fan, a young guy that thought Alabama could do no wrong. It just it's something I'll always remember because we didn't expect that.
Well, so often great things come out of tragedy or defeat or being humbled by God or humbled in some capacity. Sometimes that is what has to happen in order to turn things around. We've seen it throughout history. You take a look at Germany and Japan, 2 countries completely humbled, and they rallied and became much better. The better angels of their nature, as Abraham Lincoln would say, had their way with those. And this happens a lot. We see people. You have to sometimes get to the valley before you can get to the mountaintop. But
that is right.
Alabama has certainly reached the mountaintop. And if I thought USC under Pete Carroll had reached the ultimate mountaintop, as good as they were, what happened under the Saban era, and maybe it's going to continue, we'll see. NIL, there's a lot of changes, but what they did, I've never seen it. And I'm a college football historian. I've never seen such dominance.
Well, I hope
that's the case, Gerald. Allow me to interrupt for just a second. If the case for you and the Crimson Tide and everyone out there said Roll Tide when I was out there, and if I said it, they'd respond, how can you be wearing Auburn orange right now? What's going on? Was that a wardrobe malfunction today?
No. The when we buy merchandise for our gift shop, we try to appeal to everyone. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I have this orange top is because we had blue and we had green, and I thought maybe the Auburn people might like it. So
there you go.
Anyway, that's all.
I love it. Well, you're Alabama, Birmingham born and raised. Talk a little bit about how your upbringing ended you up here at Rickwood, and all the love of baseball, the passion for the sport, and really the business sense of keeping Rickwood Stadium itself and the museum and everything that else is a part of it alive and going as a business.
Beautiful.
Well, I'll start talking about my beginnings as a baseball fan. When I was a very young child, I remember when the TV was on Saturday afternoon, it seemed like the Yankees were on TV every Saturday. And the name Mickey Mantle resonated with me in such a way that I wanted to be Mickey Mantle. But I learned to love Whitey Ford and Roger Maris and all those guys. And that was my Saturday afternoon when I was a young kid. And I loved baseball in spite of the fact that I was surrounded by football everywhere. I loved baseball. So I started playing Little League ball and started collecting baseball cards and went to the library. I remember distinctly in the 3rd grade, I killed it when I went to the library and found all these books about baseball players because I read Babe Ruth, I read Ty Cobb, I read Willie Mays. I read everything I could read about baseball. And as time went on, I started collecting baseball cards, played high school ball after Little League, went to college, and thought about walking on at school. I went to Jacksonville State University here in Alabama. They have a really great baseball tradition. Thought about walking on there, but I saw how good those guys were compared to my mediocre baseball career in high school, and I said I better study. So
Hey, did you have to sell any of your cards ever, or do you still have any of those?
I still have them all. I still have them all. But I went to college and I came out and got a job in banking. And one of the things that the bank encouraged us to do as officers when I became an officer is to get involved in civic activities. And my baseball fandom was never far away. But the bank asked me to be on the board of the local chapter of the American Heart Association. So I did that for 7 years, and I did a pretty good job of it and was successful making the bank look good. And about the seventh year or so of that era, the group was formed called the Friends of Rickwood Field. And I had gone to Rickwood Field as a kid. I'd seen my first professional game there. As I mentioned earlier, I was a big Gene Tennis fan. And during that time, the Yankees had basically collapsed, and they were not relevant. Mickey Mantle retired. So all of a sudden, the Birmingham A's and the Oakland A's became my favorite team. And it was fun to watch those guys play here in Birmingham and then see them go on to bigger and better things like Reggie Jackson, Raleigh Fingers, Dave Duncan, Tony La Russa even played here. So I saw all that, and I just continued to love baseball, follow it as much as I could, reading about every book I could and watching it on TV. I remember watching the 67 All-Star game, and Stephen, you'll remember this, when Tony Perez hit a home run off of Catfish Hunter in, I think, the 15th or 16th inning to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I never left my seat. And I just always loved baseball. So I had gone to games at Rickwood Field. I knew Rickwood Field had been vacant for a while. And this new group was being formed called the Friends of Rickwood Field to try to pump new life into the ballpark. And they were basically not getting anywhere. The ballpark had gone to seed, as a saying they have here in the South. Nobody cared about it. The grass was growing everywhere, rust, paint chipping, and all of a sudden, these guys had an idea about trying to keep the park relevant. And it was one of those things where everything came together at the right time. Ron Shelton had done the movie Bull Durham. He was looking for a site to film the movie Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones. So he found Birmingham. And when Hollywood comes calling, everybody cares. So the city, which actually owned the park, and some of the big businesses in Birmingham, everybody got together and said, let's make this ballpark special so we can host this movie. So the Hollywood group, the city of Birmingham, and the big businesses like Alabama Power and the big banks, everybody got together, got the ballpark up to code, as they say, and then the movie was filmed. And when the movie was completed, the city basically said to the Friends of Rickwood, we don't have any interest in doing anything with this park. Why don't we just lease it to you and you guys see if you can do something with it? And they agreed to do that. And they also gave the Friends of Rickwood an annual stipend to cover the main expenses like power and water. And then they stepped away. And I was not a member of the Friends of Rickwood at that time, but I joined shortly thereafter. And at that point in time, we were hosting high school games, over 30, over 40 men's leagues, just trying to find something to keep the park active. And things were going along pretty well.
Hey, Gerald, do you mind if I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
Before the Cobb movie was made, what type of renovation did the park need? You mentioned the rust and probably a coat of paint and a pressure wash. Was there any structural damage or some issues? You said you had to get up to code, and I can certainly appreciate that. Was that a process where most of the folks in the town were going, I don't know if this is going to be worth it just for them to film a movie for a couple of weeks here? Talk a little bit about that process itself. What did the park need?
Well, mostly it was cosmetic. Grooming the baseball field, a lot of paint, a lot of cleaning.
Okay.
doing some light renovations in the restroom. The ballpark had only been vacant for I guess 6 or 7 years after the Barons left. When the '87 season completed, there was nothing happening. So it was mostly cosmetic stuff. Nothing was structurally wrong. But one of the things they did when they came to film the movie is they got an artist from Hollywood to paint all the outfield walls in period fashion, like Burma shave. Anyone heard of Burma shave?
Yeah.
Burma shave was a big thing back in the first part of the 20th century. And there were a lot of signs that were painted on the walls. Mostly it was cleaning and painting. And when they handed the ballpark over to the Friends of Rickwood, the ballpark was old, but it was still in good shape.
And if you don't mind, the park was built in 1910. And who used it back in those days? Was that a collegiate thing, semi-pro, double, AAA? Talk a little bit about who the early occupiers were of the stadium when it first opened up in Birmingham.
When it was first built, and it was built by Rick Woodward. He was an industrialist who owned Woodward Iron. Back in the days, Birmingham was called the Pittsburgh of the South because the tremendous amount of iron and steel business that was done here. And because Alabama had a abundance of iron ore, limestone, and coal, all the things necessary to make steel, that it was just a natural for that to be our industry, if you will. And so Rick Woodward was in that industry, and he bought the ball club, and they played at a place called the Slag Pile, which was not much more than some flat ground with bleachers, and he wanted a better ballpark for his team. So he bought the Barons, owned them for a few years, and then built the ballpark in 1910.
Wow.
The ballpark served as the home from the period of 1910 until different areas, different times in history when there were some gaps. But for the most part, the Birmingham Barons played here, and beginning in 1920, the Birmingham Black Barons played here. And they played here until 1962. And the way that worked, the Birmingham Barons played here as the primary tenant. When they left and went on the road, the Black Barons came and played. And the ballpark was very, very active for all that time. And not only did the Barons play, but Birmingham served as a really prime site for exhibition games. And thinking about the iron and steel business,
Yeah.
because of that, we had a great rail system. So when those teams in the early part of the century, when they started training in Florida and heading north, they were going to go through Birmingham or Atlanta because of the rail system. And as they traveled north, they would stop and play games during the day and travel by night. Because of that, we had Yankee games here many times. We had the Red Sox here. We had all the teams that train in Florida come through Birmingham and do exhibition games. So we have a huge picture in our museum space with Babe Ruth and a handful of kids. We have a picture of Dizzy Dean. We have a picture of Ty Cobb and Rogers Hornsby. So we saw over the period of time that baseball has been played at Rickwood Field, 184 Hall of Famers have played here.
Wow.
And much of that was due to the exhibition games. But as members of the Birmingham Barons, Hall of Famers Burley Grimes and Pie Traynor played here. So we've had a great baseball history.
Hey, let me ask you, Gerald, going back to the movie Cobb, was Rickwood Field depicting Navin Field in Detroit, where Cobb played during his career?
Absolutely.
It was Navin Field. Am I correct on that?
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay. Let me also make note of something that you said. This is the history of the state of Alabama played an enormous role in winning World War II and the Cold War. Because you mentioned the steel factories of Birmingham played an enormous role in producing the steel that we used to defeat the Nazis and the Japanese in World War II. And the shipping out of Mobile played an enormous role in that victory. And also the long before the 1970 USC Alabama game, which I talked about and wrote about, long before that, if you really want to go to integration in the South, it was the shipping yards of Mobile where that really got started. Then after World War II, NASA put their Redstone rocket. They put a lot of scientists at Redstone Arsenal. That's right. I was in the Army with a lot of those guys. Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. So the state really deserves a lot of credit for mobilizing, using the natural resources that are there in Alabama and the natural resources of the people of Alabama to further the greatness of the United States. So that came to mind, and I think I wrote a little bit about some of that in some of my early history at the beginning of my book, One Night, Two Teams.
And Steven, you probably know this too, going back to the 20s, there were times when Alabama and Auburn played some football games here at Rickwood Field.
Yes, I did read that. I mean, that those football games, I mean, you go back to the very beginning. It always just, I know you're a Bama fan, but it's just, I always am blown away by the story of the War Eagle. As I understand it, it was a Civil War veteran who had survived the war, and I think he had an eagle who kept him company and nurtured him. It's almost like the wolves that kept Romulus and Remus raised in Rome in ancient days. Maybe a mythology, I don't know. But eventually that young man became a student at Auburn and taught that eagle to fly into the air, which the fans got crazy for, and then he would come back and land right in his nest or with that student. Some great history there.
Yeah.
Well, Legion Field, when was that built? Do you happen to know any history on that?
I don't know. I think it was in the 30s.
Okay.
I'm a baseball guy, an Alabama football guy, so I'm not a historian unless it's Alabama football, and I should know that, but I don't.
Well, the reason I ask is because so many of Alabama's games were probably 3 or 4 a year. It depended on who they were playing, but for a capacity's sake, the Legion Field was larger than what they had on campus there in Tuscaloosa until just recently. They've gone through numerous changes there. Now UAB plays in Legion Field, but Legion Field was I would think demographic reasons, for recruiting reasons, for the size of the stadium, and for the ability for visiting teams like, let's say, Tennessee or Auburn or Georgia. It's another place to play with a room for larger crowds. Even though they wouldn't be supporting Bama, they'd be at the game, and that would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Well, that's true. Usually it was Tennessee and Auburn and maybe one other game, like Steven mentioned, the USC game.
Yeah.
That was played in the 69 and 70 there at Legion Field.
Well, you said Rickwood hosted a few football games between Alabama and Auburn, which is great. Do you mind me asking, what's the capacity for baseball now, and has it changed any over the years? Maybe within 20, 30, 50 people, but it's just a few thousand, right?
Well, currently it's 8,300.
Okay.
And we had to make some concessions for MLB to come in. And one of the things we had to do was create some adequate spaces to serve our special needs folks.
Okay.
So when Rickwood was built, there were no rules about ADA. And for all the time that we have managed the ballpark and had events and things like that, we were exempt from any kind of regulations because of our historic nature. But MLB felt like they wanted to make the ballpark accessible to all, and that was a blessing to us because it was something we didn't have the ability to do without their insistence. And so we lost some seating to create spots for ADA sections.
Yep.
And there were some other things. Our dugouts had to be changed, and I'm kind of getting out of order here, but we had to make some modifications to the dugout. So ultimately, the ballpark held about 10,000 people before the MLB game. Now it's 8,300.
Okay. And with that,
during the long history of the ballpark, there were times when there were sections that are no longer here, bleacher sections, and there were times also where they would put stands in the outfield just to create room for more people. And so there are times in history when there have been as many as 20,000 people in the park.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, that's a good sized number for any baseball fan, knowing full well that, yes, you can get 50,000 at Dodger Stadium or certain parks, but 30 is right about a Fenway capacity.
Nice
so you're pretty close to that with not having a major. And I guess the neat news for me when I looked at it is you've got enough property where if anybody ever wanted to, you could certainly grow it back up to 10, 12, 15,000. That wouldn't be a hard project to do at all, would it?
It wouldn't, but there's only certain times when that would really be necessary.
Sure.
For instance, in 2022 and 23, we were hosting the Savannah Bananas in their very early years. And so each time that we hosted the Bananas, we had 10,000 people, and we could have had more, but the fire marshal comes into play, and you got to be careful. So,
hey, Gerald, when the Bananas were in town, was Bill Spaceman Lee pitching for them?
Bill came in the first year.
Nice.
And I'm not sure if he came in the second year or not, but he was quite a character. I got to spend some good quality time with him, and he had played here in 1971 in an exhibition game as a member of the Red Sox. He remembered it.
Yep.
And we had some really good conversations about that. So he's quite a character.
Well, he is a longtime friend of mine. He's actually a neighbor of my daughter in Vermont, and he was been a guest on this show probably about 3 months ago. But I wanted to make another observation. And you're speaking of Hollywood movies and renovation of parks. And so Harper and I are Southern Californians. And Harper, are you aware of that baseball stadium as you're driving from downtown Los Angeles towards Orange County on the Interstate 5? It's on the right-hand side. It's like in the City of Commerce, in that sort of industrial area. There's a ballpark. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've driven by it, but I've never stopped to do anything other than wave, if you know what I mean.
Okay. I'll give you a quick story on that. It's kind of ties in with Rickwood Field and how they fixed that up. In 1991, I was an assistant baseball coach at the University of California, Berkeley. So we were in town playing the Trojans, and we looked over to the batting cages, and there was a very attractive girl who was taking batting practice. And we all sort of crept over there to look a little closer. It was Madonna. And she was being coached by some Trojan coaches to get ready for the movie A League of Their Own. And A League of Their Own was largely filmed at that ballpark I'm talking about. It's called Quigley Field, and it was owned by Philip K. Wrigley. But it wasn't called Wrigley Field because there already was a Wrigley Field in Los Angeles. So it was called Quigley Field. Maybe there was somebody else named Quigley. I'm not sure. And it was a famous ballpark. And actually, USC's summer league team that played in the California Collegiate League played there for a number of years. But they fixed that ballpark up, and that was the ballpark that was used in A League of Their Own. So that's an interesting little note about how some of these old ballparks like Rickwood Field can be fixed up and made to look like something beautiful.
Do me a favor, if you wouldn't mind, Gerald, talk about the process. Did Hollywood come to you? Do they go to the city of Birmingham? Who do they contact if they're saying, hey, we're interested in possibly renting or leasing out this field for a little while? How does that process work?
Well, I can't speak of how it worked back in the days of Cobb, but I'll tell you how it worked with the 42 film crew.
Please.
They came out here as regular tourists, and this is in the early days of drones, but some of us had never seen drones, but they came out. I say they, some guys came out, took some pictures, asked a few questions, didn't say who they were, whatever, just acted like fans. And then several weeks later, we were contacted by, I believe, the location scout. And he said, we've been out there, we've taken some pictures. We'd like to talk to you about filming a movie here. And I thought, wow, that's great. And the next thing you know, we're meeting with groups of people. Brian Helgeland, I believe, is the executive producer, and some other folks about doing a movie here. And it was the 42 movie. And they actually filmed that in 2010. It was a very, very fun experience. I took a week off from my real job so I could hang out. I didn't do any. I didn't serve as an extra or anything like that.
What? Come on, you got to get in the movie somehow, right? They didn't have a part for you?
Well, I could have, but I felt like it was more important for me, being the leader of our group and managing the ballpark. I felt like it was more important for me to be available and take care of things that might come up, rather than sit in the sweltering hot sun with a wool suit on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave that job to my son. So
Okay.
My son and my wife participated. I didn't, but I had a much better time being behind the scenes, and it was a blast. And I hope that there's another movie in our future. So we'll see. But they came to us, and they didn't. We didn't talk to the city of Birmingham until we had a really good idea they were coming, and from that point on, the city participated very well in helping with some of the things that were necessary. And then we ended up having a really cool opportunity to meet the actors, got to spend some time with Chad Boseman and some of the other guys. And it was fun. Didn't see Harrison Ford. I don't think he ever came to Birmingham. I think he did some things in sound stages here and there. But it was fun, and I'd certainly love to do it again.
Were there any, I'm not asking you to give any trade secrets away, but were there any demands that
No, they were actually very, very respectful of the property and respectful. And they didn't ask us to do anything. They brought in folks to do a lot of building. They would put some false walls in front of the modern style toilets we have in our restrooms, so they could make the restroom look period authentic. Okay. They did things like that, but they didn't do anything that would change the look of the park on a permanent basis. I know they did some things CGI, but I will say when they left, they truly left it better than they came in with it. So it was good.
Let me ask you this, Gerald. Well, first of all, you mentioned Brian Helgeland, I believe is the pronunciation. He's quite a very well-known writer, producer. I think he made his mark originally with The Usual Suspects. But I'm pretty sure that the second unit director of 42 was a man named Alan Graff. And Alan Graff, just to let you know, was a football player who played in the 1970 USC-Alabama game. And he became a stuntman and a second unit director of basically every sports movie, especially football movie, Varsity Blues, Any Given Sunday, Friday Night Lights, you name it, including baseball movies, including this. Did you get a chance to meet Mr. Alan Graff?
Boy, that brings back a great memory, Stephen. There's a scene in the film where the Pittsburgh pitcher, I believe his name was Fritz Ostermuller.
That is right. Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. What a name.
Yeah.
So I remember that. Oh no, it's Ostermuller.
Ostermuller. Okay.
Yeah, he had Jackie's number. You know.
Fritz was trying to hit Jackie with a pitch.
Right.
And we started. They started filming that scene at maybe 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, or maybe a little later because it was dark. And a young man named Luke Hand, who was a Birmingham native, was portraying the pitcher. And they had either 3 or 4 different African-American actors, all wearing 42, all about the same size, and they had the same number young guys dressed up in catcher's garb. And the film apparatus was set up behind home plate, and I hung out with Alan for about 5 hours. I can't tell you the number of takes that we did before he was finally satisfied, but the scene involved the pitcher throwing the ball to try to hit Jackie, and then Jackie and the catcher rolling around in the dirt in a fight. And Alan was such a perfectionist that we finished, I want to say it was 30 plus takes. We finished at 1 or 2 in the morning after starting at 7 or 8. And I was back there watching the screen with him and listening, and it was fascinating. I'll never forget it. To me, it was the most fun part of the movie, even though I'd been there all day and I was ready to go home. But I guess I understood at that time how much he cared about making the movie right, and about how Hollywood, we talk about Hollywood in some ways, about how they change things, they glorify things or they enhance things, but to see the amount of time and detail that went into that scene, and I wasn't a part of it, but I watched every minute of it, and that was something I'll never forget. And so,
yeah. Well,
Alan, tell him I said hello, and
I will. He's a good friend of mine, and Harper, we're going to have him on this show when football season rolls around. I've got a whole slate of football people. Right now, it's still baseball, but yes, Alan. I've talked to him at length about his career, and yes, you're absolutely right. He's a true professional. There's no question. Great guy. Really like him a lot.
He was a little bit gruff, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. He comes off that way. You know, you look at his size, first of all. Yeah. He's a former football player with a very deep and gravelly voice. His son was like a 6'8" lineman who played for Pete Carroll in around 2008 or 9, right around that period when they were still really good. And not only that, he's had some ups and downs regarding the production of the movie version of One Night, Two Teams, or it wasn't even called that yet. He actually had he had a deal all set up in which he was going to direct a movie about the 1970 USC Alabama game, and an ex-teammate of his who thought that the story was his somehow, not, I mean, that's like D-Day is the story of one guy. I mean, it's a historical story. And so it kind of got stolen away from Alan, but I'm very sympathetic to that. And I truly hope that, I mean, he's not a real young guy anymore, and he's semi-retired, I think. But if we ever get that movie made, I really want Alan to do the football. Heck, I think he could actually direct it. I don't know whether they would give him that responsibility, but he is a professional, as you saw. And so that's a great contact that we both have.
Well, we after that movie was finished, we had a local premiere. It was really fun. And we hoped that something else would come along. I believe we were able to host a 3 or 4 day shooting for a show called, I think it was called Brockmire.
Oh, you shot that? Yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, they shot one episode of that, yeah. And then we kind of, since we're on that roll here, about 4 years ago, we served as the site for the filming of Say Hey Willie Mays, if you've seen that documentary.
I have, yes.
And that was a lot of fun. And then I guess a year after that, we hosted Reggie Jackson, Joe Rudy, and Raleigh Fingers in the reminiscing that Reggie did for his documentary, which was called Reggie.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had calls for scouts to come out and look, and nothing's really developed. But I hope we can do another movie sometime. I will tell you this is going back to the 42 movie, one of the things that fell upon my shoulders at that time, I still had a full-time job, so I wasn't the day-to-day operator, but it fell upon my shoulders to negotiate the contract with Legendary Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And guys, I was a fish out of water. I'd been a banker for my whole life, so I was familiar with numbers and I was familiar with money, and I was familiar with lending and things like that on the corporate side. But I had no idea how to negotiate with Hollywood. So I called the Alabama Tourism and Film Office. I called a bunch of people. I really got no help. It was kind of one of these things that mostly, I guess, in that period of time, most movies were still being filmed in Hollywood. I know there's a lot filmed in Atlanta now and other places, but I didn't get a lot of help. So I pulled a figure. I'm not going to say what it is. I pulled a figure out of my hat, and I told the movie people what it was, and they said, "Where can we sign?" Okay. So I knew I left some money on the table, but there was a great deal of exposure and experience that we gained from it. And so it all worked out. But if we have another opportunity, I'll at least have some experience under my belt.
Well, speaking of that, Gerald, if you wouldn't mind, are there any stories that you're familiar with regarding Rickwood itself? There's a picture of you. It's on our left. It's behind your right shoulder of Reggie Jackson. He played there. You've mentioned Gene Tennis, Joe Rudy. You've had so many other amazing players that have been through. Willie Mays. There's a picture of Hank Aaron going up the steps that we have. Thank you, Logan. Is there maybe Steven could do the screenplay for it, but tell me some of the stories about either an individual, a team, or an era that Rickwood would just be perfect for in a movie that everyone would want to see, and it would make everyone a lot of money.
Well, I'd love to see a better movie made of Ty Cobb. The movie Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones was based on a very bad book by Al Stump that didn't really depict the true Ty Cobb. I would love to see something with a better story of Ty Cobb. I would love to see a movie made about the life of Ted Williams. We could certainly serve as a place for that. But stories here locally that really reflect back on Rickwood. The 1931 Dixie series when Ray Caldwell outdealed Dizzy Dean. I think that's a good story. I don't know that you can make a movie out of it. But we've had a lot of big time players come through here. I think you'd have to encompass a lot of different people to make a movie. But a good movie about Satchel Paige could be made.
You bet.
And I've often thought that someone should make a movie. Steven, pass this on. Somebody needs to make a movie about Roberto Clemente.
Oh, absolutely.
And since this ballpark was somewhat modeled after Forbes Field, what better place to shoot that? And I've said something to Roberto Jr. about that, and I've heard him say, well, we've talked about that before. Nothing's really taken hold. But I think that'd be a great movie to film here.
Those are all excellent ideas, and heck, you ought to be a producer. You got some of the best ideas for sports movies. Another one, frankly, is the 1967 Birmingham A's, Birmingham Athletics. Now, this is a team that you have a picture of Reggie Jackson, and this is the genesis of the 1972 to 74 three-time world champion A's. They had Reggie Jackson, they had Gene Tennis, they had Raleigh Fingers, they had Joe Rudy, and they had others. And a couple of points about that team. One, towards the end of the 67 season, Al Dark was the manager of they were then the Kansas City A's. They had, I think they also had Rick Monday on that team. He was the first pick in the 65 draft. Reggie was, I believe, the second pick in the 66 draft. Half of those guys had played at Arizona State for Bobby Winkles.
That's right.
They were just one of the greatest minor league baseball teams of all time. And when Al Dark got fired, he went up to Charlie Finley's office and he says, Charlie, I really wish you would not fire me because there is more talent in this farm system than any farm system that I have ever seen. And I would love to be there to manage these guys when they get to the big leagues, because they're going to win a few World Series. And it wasn't enough. Finley fired managers just as frequently as George Steinbrenner, but Al Dark was brought back in '74 and did manage the team in their third World Series. But it's also important to note that Reggie was playing for the team, and Finley was good friends with Paul Bear Bryant, the Alabama coach, invited him to a game because, as you mentioned, Finley was from Birmingham. Oddly enough, as intelligent as he was and as good a baseball scout and seer of talent, for lack of a better term, he had only played American Legion baseball in Birmingham, and yet he somehow was able to pick out talent. But he had Bryant at the game, and Bryant's son, Paul Jr., was the general manager. And in a very famous scene that was mentioned in Reggie's autobiography, and maybe in that documentary that you were talking about, Finley brings Bryant down to the clubhouse, introduces him to Reggie, who had been a star at Arizona State. And Bryant was talking about integrating his program. He said, "You're the kind of ball player that we need, that we're looking for." And so that was an interesting precursor to what happened just 2-3 years later. Did you ever get a chance to talk to Reggie, or what do you know about that '67 team, that encounter, and what was going on during that period of time?
Well, yeah, we did talk about that at length, and he didn't have the best experience in Birmingham due to at that time we were still transitioning from a very difficult time in race relations, and I know that he spent some time living with Raleigh Fingers because he couldn't get suitable accommodations for himself. But he had not been back to Birmingham from the time he left here in 1967 until 3 years ago, I guess, when he came to work on that documentary. And I tried to impress upon him that things had changed, that Birmingham was not the Birmingham he knew, and we had a good talk about the game. I mean, and the games and the team. I reminded him that he had been one of the 3 people who had hit one over the right field roof and over the fence beyond that, which is probably a 500-foot clout. And I told him that Babe Ruth, Stan Musial, and Reggie Jackson were the only 3 to hit it over that. And it was raining that day, but he got my groundskeepers to take him out with an umbrella so he could look back and see how far he hit it. And I thought that was kind of a fun anecdote to share with you guys. But overall, that team was probably one of the top 3 or 4 minor league teams in the history of baseball. I mean, the talent, and Dave Duncan, who was more famous as a pitching coach, was a catcher.
Yes.
And it was just the right alignment of the stars when you had so many good players there. And then, of course, they go on to Oakland, and it's fun to remember watching those guys as a younger kid and then seeing them on TV dominating the World Series.
Gerald, you were talking about basically the civil rights movement, or that era. And a few years prior to Reggie Jackson playing in Birmingham in 1967, and this was in a documentary that was made about the 1970 USC-Alabama game. There's actually been several documentaries. One was on College Sports TV, one was on Showtime, and another was on HBO, and maybe another. I mean, it's received a lot of attention. And one of them, they were talking about an event, I believe it was in 62 or 63, and you can enlighten me further if you know more about this. I believe it was called the Children's March. And I think it was 62 or 63, and George Wallace was the governor, and I believe Rickwood Field is part of the fairgrounds, if I'm not mistaken. And what I was what they said in this documentary was that they arrested a lot of these marchers and put them at Rickwood Field, which was only, and as they were mentioning, only a short distance from Legion Field, where such a huge difference occurred only 7 years later. Is it part of the state fairgrounds, and what do you know about that event?
I don't know anything about that event, but the state fairgrounds is 0.8 of a mile away from Rickwood Field.
Okay.
And, I haven't heard that. I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting contrast. It's something that happened in 1963, and 7 years later. Now I don't know if you know this, but if you read the book, which I'll send to you, the Alabama fans were just stunned into submission when Cunningham was having this big game, and you started hearing black fans who were sitting in the end zone cheering. And when USC came out to the bus at the end of the game, the local African-American fans in this neighborhood were surrounding the bus with candles and singing hymnals. And we talked about this with Carrie McCluggage. We talked about movie moments, if this can ever be made into a movie, candles and hymnals, and treating these players like they were like Moses. And it was an amazing event. This is why this is the game that really made the difference. There were other games and there were other events, and obviously just having the integrated Birmingham A's in 1967 made a difference. But it was really that 1970 game. So hopefully we're going to get a chance to be in Birmingham, and you can be our field director, showing us all the sights when we're there filming, because that stadium is still there. And how does the Birmingham look today compared with 1970? Is there a huge difference, or can we still capture that old vibe?
Oh, you can still capture a lot of old buildings. The ballpark, Rickwood Field, and Legion Field are both in areas that have been neglected by developers. So what you see now is very much like what you would have seen back in the day, whether you're talking about the 30s, 40s, or 50s. A lot of old houses, a lot of low-income neighborhoods. So if you're in those areas, you can truly see that in some ways time has passed us by. And I tell people this all the time: Rickwood Field is not in a very good area demographically, but if it had been built, if you look at the north, south, east, and west of Birmingham, the west is the one area that has not been developed like the other areas. And if development had come this way, then Rickwood Field would have been an ideal candidate to be a hospital or a parking lot or a mall or some apartment buildings. So the fact that we were in an area that no one chose to develop is the reason why we're still here.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood that we are in is the inhabitants are nice and friendly and friends of the ballpark, and we try to accommodate them when we can with tickets to games and stuff like that, and they like having us here. And I would imagine the same thing with Legion Field. But
let me ask you, Gerald, did Michael Jordan play at Rickwood Field in 1993?
No, he played at Hoover Metropolitan Stadium. So after the Barons left, when the 87 season ended, the Barons moved to Hoover Metropolitan Stadium, and Michael played there in 1993 or 4. I don't remember. I think you said 93. Michael played there and played to huge crowds. Mm-hmm. It was much more of a cultural event for him being here than a sporting event. But he never played here at Rickwood Field.
Never played at Rickwood. But was the fact that he shone a light on Birmingham as far as a baseball place, because, it was known for football, really. Did that play a role in the reconstruction of Rickwood, the idea of of really resurrecting this old ballpark and turning it into a jewel, or was that not really a factor?
I think the nostalgia and the fact that so many baseball fans of the time remembered Rickwood Field as a place where they saw Reggie play as a kid, or even older guys who saw Walt Dropo, or some of the people who saw some of these exhibition games with these big name guys. And we've got pictures galore of Yankees coming in here playing in the 50s. We got a picture of Phil Rizzuto and Yogi Berra eating at a local restaurant. I mean, there's so much history, and people were clamoring for that when it seemed like there was a nostalgia craze, and it's like let's kind of put some new life into that. We came here as a kid. Why do we have to lose it? And Birmingham had a tremendous, cool looking building back in my childhood. It was a terminal station for the buses and the trains, and it was a fabulous piece of architecture. And they tore that down to build the interstate, and so many people remembered that cool building. And I mean, it was really majestic. And when that was torn down and it was gone, people started opening their eyes to some of the architecture we had, and Rickwood was among those. And there were a lot of memories. People coming here with their father or their grandfather, hearing stories about the characters that played here, like I believe it was Norm Zouchin, who had 10 RBIs in a game as a member of the Senators back in the 50s. Norm Zouchin chases a foul ball into the stands, lands on a young lady, and ends up marrying her. I mean, there's stories like that, and those kind of things resonated. And remembering.
Well, that reminds me of my friend Jim Jones, who played for the Huntsville Stars. And he was a California kid who I grew up with. We were teammates in high school. He played at Pepperdine, made the Southern League All-Star team, AA All-Star team for Huntsville in 1987, and met a girl and married her, and stayed in Huntsville. And today still has season tickets for the Crimson Tide. And in fact, I'm going to be in Alabama in a couple of months. Maybe I'll look you up, but he's got tickets for me for an Alabama game. But let's go back to, I believe it's 1948, 49. And a young fellow named Willie Mays grows up in a town called Fairfield, which I believe was a suburb of Birmingham.
Right.
And he is a football player, baseball player, and basketball player in high school. But his father was a great baseball player who had played semi-pro baseball. So I'm wondering if his father had played at Rickwood Field before that. He gets picked up by a guy named Piper Davis, who's the manager of I guess it was the Birmingham Black Barons.
Right.
Young Willie Mays, he's 17 or 18. Instead of playing his senior year in high school, he's playing, and this is top level Negro League baseball. And he is showing what he can do playing at Rickwood Field in 1948. And recently, Major League Baseball incorporated the statistics of the Negro League, including Willie Mays hitting a couple of homers when he was 18 playing at Birmingham. And I know this was a big part of this event that happened a year ago. Unfortunately, Willie passed away just before that event occurred. But boy, there must have been a lot of recollection of Willie Mays growing up in Birmingham. And not just Willie Mays. The athletes who've come out of Alabama, you have Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Willie McCovey, just right off the top. My friend, Scott Hunter, who was a quarterback at Alabama, he's out of Mobile. He's from there, and obviously all the great football stars from who played for the Crimson Tide and for Auburn, and Frank Thomas and Bo Jackson. The list is endless. But Willie Mays, is he the greatest athlete ever to come out of Alabama? And if so, he's right there in Birmingham. What say you?
Well, let me say this. He's definitely the greatest baseball player ever to come out of Alabama. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll tell you something a lot of your folks might like to hear. When Willie first joined the Birmingham Black Barons, he was a young kid amongst a bunch of older guys, and his mother would not let him play on the away games, so he could only play here. And he viewed Rickwood Field as a palace, to him, Rickwood Field could have been a substitute for Yankee Stadium or the Polo Grounds. He thought when he had got to Rickwood Field, he had made it. So he could only play on the home games until they made the playoffs. And they ended up playing in Memphis, and they won the Negro American League Championship, and he was able to play on those away games due to the fact that it was a championship. And his mother entrusted Piper Davis and Bill Greason to keep him out of trouble. And Willie never developed a drinking habit. He didn't run around and do anything. He was a serious baseball player. So they didn't win the Ultimate Negro League World Series, and that was the last year there was a Negro League World Series. So after that, he goes on to play for the New York Giants, and is absolutely I'm not going to argue with anyone if they say Willie was the greatest baseball player of all time. However, I think the greatest athlete to ever come out of Alabama was named Bo Jackson. Mm-hmm. Now, Bo had the fame of playing here as a high schooler with McAdory High School. He played here with Auburn University against UAB in a baseball game when he was at Auburn. And then he played here with the Memphis Chicks before he went up to the Royals. So Bo Jackson's probably the greatest athlete to ever come out of Alabama. And I'm not an Auburn fan, but I give Bo credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes quite a sacrifice for a Roll Tide born and bred to be able to say Vincent Bo Jackson was one of the best. Dion most recently did an interview with somebody, and he was talking about Michael Jordan. I think he was on with Rich Eisen, and himself being a two-sport guy. And Dion just put it this way. He goes, well, Michael and I, we had one thing that separated us from Bo. Vincent Bo Jackson could hit a curveball. And he said it with just the right pause to make you realize how hard that was. And running a 4.19, 4.18 40 certainly didn't hurt him either.
When he left Auburn and didn't compete against Alabama anymore, I became a Bo Jackson fan, and I am to this day. I've had a chance to see him a couple of times, and he's always been a gentleman. And I've tried, and I'm going to never stop trying. I'm trying to find a way to get him to come to Rickwood Field.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he'll be there when we're filming that. Boy, he could almost I'm almost saying he could portray a football player in the movie, but I guess the years have still taken. But he is the reason that the Major League All-Star game the day before has a home run hitting contest. He started that. I was there at Anaheim Stadium in '89, sitting in the upper deck watching Bo Jackson put on an absolute unbelievable home run display when he was in the All-Star game in '89. And then in the game, which was the next day against Rick Russell, he did the same thing. He took one of Russell's off-speed pitches and deposited it, 450 feet. So I was there. I saw up close all the things that he did for the Raiders or the Royals. And I don't disagree with you. Was he the greatest athlete? He's certainly up. Willie Mays was a great football player too. He was a quarterback. He was, I could easily see Willie Mays in a wishbone offense,
Steven, did you ever hear in any of your research or talking to folks, did you ever hear Willie's comment that he thought he was a better basketball player? Did you ever hear that?
Yes. He loved basketball, and it would make sense. And I could easily, Willie Mays, I think he could have played in the NBA or the NFL. But let's face it, he was born to be a baseball player. That was his sport. That was there's no way he could have been better in football or basketball than he was in baseball. That's just insanity. You could argue Jackson Was he better in football than he was in baseball? I don't know. That run that he ran against Seattle. I mean, he displaced Marcus Allen with the Raiders in the prime of Allen's career. And Marcus was not a fan of Al Davis for allowing that to happen. But in fact, I wrote a book about the history of the Raiders, and it's a picture of Bo Jackson is what they chose to be on the cover of that book. So, yes, that's right. I sent it to Harper, and he is displaying it. Thank you very much. There will be a check in the mail for you.
No, I've been reading it. I love it. It's great. Hey, don't forget the guy we spoke about earlier. They made a movie about him. Jackie Robinson was one heck of a four-sport guy, right? He played basketball, track. And then Dave Winfield was amazing at the University of Minnesota back when they were allowing that. If you don't mind, Gerald, just the significance of the Negro Leagues and Birmingham's role in that from a historical standpoint. Is there anything that you would want to mention that we would obviously gain from the importance of certain games? You mentioned the World Series, the Negro League World Series. What other things would we glean from that?
Well, I've heard, and I know some of the records are not that accurate, but I've heard that this is where Satchel Paige pitched his first professional game as a member of the Black Barons in the 20s. And skipping ahead a few years, several guys just came around too early. Have you guys ever heard the name Artie Wilson?
I've heard the name.
So Artie Wilson was a fabulous hitter who he was just a little too old when the color line was broken, but he was a standout with the Barons, and Piper Davis was a really good player.
Yes, he was.
And then
Willie Mays' dad was a great. Willie Mays' dad ever play at Rickwood, Gerald?
I'm sure he probably did. I don't have any record of it, but he went by the name of Cat Mays.
Yes.
And
correct.
He was thought of as a really fine athlete and a great baseball player. You know, so many stories that we miss out on because the records and there's not a lot of records on it. We don't know a lot about what happened in some of those Negro League games.
I can give you one story. There was a ball player named Cool Papa Bell. Known as the Black Tie Cobb. And he was said to be so fast that he could turn the lights out and get in bed before it got dark. Then there was another story. I believe this is around 1934 or 35. And this is, again, Satchel Paige. Help me out, Gerald, the great catcher. Who's
Josh Gibson.
Josh Gibson. Cool Papa Bell. And just a lot of those great players of that era. They were recruited. This has nothing to do with Rickwood Field, but it does. It's a big history of the Negro Leagues. They were recruited to play in the off season by the dictator of the Dominican Republic, Rafael Trujillo.
Uh-huh.
Trujillo brings these guys to the Dominican. This is the start of baseball in the DR. This is where baseball starts in the Dominican Republic because nobody had ever played baseball. Maybe there were some Marines there. There were some American troops. This is usually how it begins, but this is the real genesis. And Trujillo gets these guys together, and they're going to play this full schedule as the national team of the Dominican Republic. And then he says, he finally finishes, and the interpreter goes, "Oh, by the way, there is one rule that cannot be broken. You must not lose." And they're all looking at each other like, "What do you mean we must lose?" And it basically goes, "Or else," you know. And that team, I think they were something like 61-0, playing against whatever competition they were facing, which is probably other teams in the Dominican Republic, maybe Cuban teams, and maybe some Mexican teams. I don't know exactly what the schedule was, but they did not lose. But they said when they had played that final game, old Satchel Paige, as he said, "Don't look behind. There's going to be something chasing you." And that's how he felt as he was leaving the Dominican Republic undefeated, knowing that if he'd lost a single game, it might have been the last game he'd ever play.
That's a great story. I'm glad you shared that. I'll share that with some of my colleagues as well.
Oh yeah, the Negro Leagues are rich with great history. A lot of it is mythology, and a lot of it is not. I'm not going to say made up stories, but stories that have been handed down, at the campfire, if you will, and it's such a part of Americana, playing baseball year round and traveling all over the place. Obviously, they weren't treated well, and yet somehow or other, it was part of America, and it was part of the story. You can't just whitewash the history of America. It's a big, rambling, unbelievable country, and I love it. I got an American flag right behind me, and these are all the stories that make it up, and you have to learn from them. And this is why I applaud you, sir, for keeping the story of Rickwood Field alive for those of us who love history and love baseball and love sports. It's a big part of Alabama. It's a big part of Birmingham. There's no question about it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I will tell you, I think we covered about a quarter of what I wanted to cover. So let's do it again sometime. I have to go soon. I'm leaving very early in the morning to go to Cooperstown, and I go in annually, but this year is kind of special for me because over the period of time when we were working on getting the MLB game here, I spent some time with CC Sabathia, and I told him 2 years ago that he was going in the Hall of Fame, and he said, "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "Yeah, I know, you're going in." And so I'm looking forward to being there and congratulating him and reminding him that I told him he was going in. So,
well, I'm glad that he's going in because you made that happen, not because of his accomplishments or anything else. Gerald, that's a great recommendation. Before you go, I wanted to ask: college baseball, high school baseball, there's travel ball. There's still reasons that Rickwood is important even today. The field is immaculate. Talk a little bit about just what are the main reasons that Rickwood has significance and is still baseball is being played not daily, but throughout the summer. There's almost every day where there's at least one game going on at the field.
Well, starting in March, we're going to have the Miles College team play their home games here. That's a local HBCU. Then when Miles is on the road, we'll have 3 of Birmingham high schools play their games here. And then other high schools from around the state will call, and if I can fit them in, I fit them in. And then annually, we have a game called the Rickwood Classic, which started in 1996. It was kind of a gift to Rickwood from the owners of the Barons, who wanted to make money off of the nostalgia, but also do a fundraiser for us. So the Rickwood Classic occurred from 1996 until 2019, and that was a regular scheduled game between the Birmingham Barons and whoever their Southern League opponent was. It was a daytime game played the Wednesday after Memorial Day, and sometimes we would have 5,000 to 10,000 people show up for that game, and it was a cultural event, not just a baseball game. People would come to that game when they would not go to any other game. And so we lost that due to COVID. We started that back last year, so we hope that game continues. And then everybody knows about the MLB game that happened on June the 20th of last year. But almost a month ago, we hosted an MLB event called the East-West Classic, which CC Sabathia played a big part in us getting that game here. They originally hosted it in Cooperstown, but CC had the idea of bringing it to Rickwood. It was a game that featured recently retired players who could still play: Prince Fielder, Gary Sheffield, Nick Swisher, a whole bunch more. They came out and they played. They had a home run derby that Prince Fielder won in a slug off over Andrew Jones. So MLB continues to have a relationship with us. I mentioned the World Police and Fire games. And then in June and July, we're almost overtaken by Perfect Game. They play, as you said, almost every day. When they leave, school starts back. So August and September are a little bit slower. But then we have our own home run derby in the fall where we recruit former big leaguers. This year, we're hoping to have Jose Canseco and 4 or 5 other guys. And then we include a couple of college guys. So we play ball, and we have activities here from mid-February all the way to the end of October. And then we take a couple of months off and get ready for the next year. So there's always a lot going on. We try to keep our website up to date to let everybody know what we're doing, and come on out and see baseball. If you don't come to see a game, come and do a tour. We'd love to have people out here and share it. And we have had a 400% increase in tourism, not baseball fans, but tourism since the MLB game. And we just we rarely have a date when we don't have a game booked. And so we're open. I would invite the fans from baseball and history to come and see us.
Well, the reason that I wanted to get a hold of you is because of Mike Newton and the conversation that I had with him. You're in a room that's about 30 by 50. Talk a little bit about the actual building that you are in. It's just off the first base side of home plate. On the other side, the back side of the stadium, away from where the fans are, but the memorabilia, the gloves, the bats, Jackie's locker, certain things that you have there that are a part of what anybody could see. Go right ahead and share what you can with us.
Well, I'm holding a glove from 1928. So we have a section of gloves that fans can come in and they can take these gloves out and play catch with them, and they can see what it was like. We remember when our father said catch with 2 hands. Well, this is why. This glove is not much bigger than my hand. Yeah. And you can go out on our field and play catch with that. You can go out and you can play with a 1933 catcher's mitt. And you can see what it was like in olden times. So we have old bats. We have pictures of famous people and different things that happened at Rickwood Field. Rickwood hosted the circus. Rickwood hosted Stevie Wonder and James Brown and Leonard Skinner. So Rickwood's had a very rich history, mostly baseball, but not only baseball. So there's something for everybody.
Well, that's one of the cool things about it. That I'm going to call it the museum. I don't think that's what you call it.
Museum gift shop.
The photographs,
whatever room anybody wants to call it.
All those gloves, and some of those items are for sale, right? And right. I would imagine old guys, gray hairs like Steven and I, if we had any really cool baseball memorabilia that we wanted to donate, would that be something that you guys might accept? Talk a little bit about what
we do accept donations, and we're to the point now where we try to make it. We try to take only vintage things. Somebody called and wanted to donate some 1982 baseball cards, and we'll take them.
I've got 1982 baseball cards. I've got my baseball card when I was a member of the Oakland A's in 1982 in the minor leagues.
How about that?
I just cleared out my house because I'm renting it, and I had found my white cleats that I wore when I played in the A's organization back in that's the year 1982. When we get finished with this, I'd just like to get a couple minutes with you off the air to get your address, because I want to send you my book. And I also want to ask about your trip to Cooperstown, because I might have something interesting that we could talk about. It won't take but a second after we're finished.
All right.
Well, we'll be respectful of your time, Gerald. Anything else that we would need to know? I've got, you can go to P.O. Box 12583. The work phone number is 205-603-3871. There's either yourself, Mike Newton, or anybody else there. If you had any questions or you want to be a part of what Rickwood is trying to keep going. I imagine some of your cards are a little bit older than 1982. So if I had a 55 Mickey Mantle, you take that, right? You'd find a good home for that, maybe?
I would find a good home for that.
That's right.
Might not be at Rickwood Field. It might be at my home address. But
it might be at my personal home address, right?
I wish I'd talked to you before I cleared my house out. I would send you that pair of white baseball spikes that I gave to Goodwill the other day. I hated parting. Oh my God.
Well, Ty Cobb used to adjust his spikes, didn't he? He kind of pointed them in one direction, maybe. Yeah, that's the rumor mill with
What
that.
they say.
Yeah,
I was recently in Lake Tahoe at the exact location where Al Stump interviewed Ty Cobb in that infamous article that he wrote about Cobb that was later turned into a book that was made into the movie starring Tommy Lee Jones. And unfortunately, I agree with you. It was not what that movie should have been. It was, I don't even know what Shelton was getting at, because I was a fan of his, and I actually met Shelton with Bill Lee one time. You're speaking of Cooperstown, I was in Cooperstown with Bill Lee, Goose Gossage, and Raleigh Fingers. It was an amazing. So I can talk to you a little bit off air about a suggestion for that trip.
Absolutely.
Well,
Okay.
why don't we do this, Gerald? We appreciate everything that you do to keep Rickwood and baseball alive. Thank you for your service. Fundraisers, non-baseball activities, the World Police and Fire Games. You've hosted those, even though they're all across the globe. College, high school, travel ball is all kept alive there as we speak, right? Games going on constantly. And from a historical perspective, there are very few people that know more than you do about what Birmingham, Alabama's historical connection to baseball is. We appreciate you spending some of your time here. You are the president of Rickwood Field. Gerald, thank you so much for being a part of today's show.
It's been a pleasure, and let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. There's always more that we can learn. You said we've only covered about a quarter of it, so we'll go into the second quarter, if you will, or maybe start of the third or fourth inning next time that we have you on. So for Steven Travers, our producer is Logan Landers. Thank you for putting the pictures together here today, Logan. We appreciate everybody that's been able to tune in today for a special edition of Take 5 with Steven Travers. I'm Harper LeBel saying thank you for tuning in to 100 Yards of Football. We appreciate you being a part of today's show. Have a fantastic rest of your